You are listening to The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Andrea Spearman, and this is The Black Landscape, where we engage with emerging and established Black leaders here in the San Francisco Bay Area. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts or in the comments of our social media. I am Andrea, and I am a light-skinned Black woman with my dark brown curly hair up in a poof today. I'm wearing my dusty pink glasses and a bright yellow t-shirt with electric blue letters that read Pulp and an image of an orange. Don't ask me where I got this shirt. Our special guest today is the actor's actor, Fred Pitts. Please describe yourself to the people.
Good morning, good day, everyone. My name is Fred Pitts. I'm a brown-skinned Black male with a very receding hairline. I've got about 5 o'clock shadow on my face because I didn't have to go into the office today. I am wearing a green and light green Oakland A's sweatshirt. You know,
Hey.
mourning my team leaving and going to Vegas, but that's a different story for a different day.
Oh, don't even get us started on
I won't. That's a different podcast.
Well, welcome, Fred. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So for those who may not be familiar, please briefly share who you are.
I will do this as briefly as I can. My name is Fred Pitts. I am an actor, and someone now described me as a solo performer. I am also a licensed physician. I am board certified in emergency medicine, and I worked in emergency departments in Oakland and Berkeley for almost 20 years. And I live in San Francisco, married, no children, which means I still have my sanity.
Listen, look, big ups to all of us childless on purpose people.
Amen. And big ups to people who have children. God bless y'all.
Mm-hmm. Right. Over there.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that briefly. Thank you so much, first of all, for your service on the front lines of medicine during these past couple of years. It's been a tough time for all, but thank you specifically for your service. But before we get into that, let's go way back. Describe growing up here in the Bay Area. Like, how did you first get interested in acting?
Well, first of all, I did not grow up in the Bay Area. I grew up in the Midwest, Dayton, Ohio. Yep. Dayton, Ohio. That's where I was born. My father was from Georgia, moved up to Dayton to work for the Air Force in the 50s, and my mom was born in Dayton and was an educator. They met, and 4 years later, they had me. So that's where I grew up, true Midwest, with one brother, Mark, who lives in Oakland now.
Okay, well then, what brought you here to the Bay Area?
Well, life in the Midwest, high school, college in Michigan, med school in Ohio, and then when I was applying to residency, my brother at the same time was in law school, and he decided he was going to come out west. And I thought about coming out west for residency, but I ended up in Chicago. And then when I was done with that, through some unforeseen circumstances at the time, there were no full-time ER jobs in Chicago because there were a few vacancies and a whole lot of people who got out of residency. So since my brother was out here and we thought about just a big change, my ex-wife and I applied for a job in Oakland on a lark, and they hired me. So that's what brought me out to California. I got a job in Oakland working in an emergency department right after residency.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
You know, there have been a few people who have magically found themselves here in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
And since we're here talking about medicine, let's keep going. How did you find this environment, the Bay Area culture, different than back in?
That's a good question. When I was training in emergency medicine in Chicago, it was a downtown hospital. So we had pretty much everything. It was Northwestern. So we had pretty much everything just off of Michigan Avenue, if you know Chicago at all. And it was a very urban setting. And then when I moved out to Oakland, at the hospital where I worked, it was a great hospital. I mean, I loved Summit. It's center of Oakland. I used to describe it as a public hospital with a private patient class, and sometimes a private hospital with a public patient class. So you had everybody. You did. And what was interesting out here there were a lot of people who had to use the emergency department because a lot of people didn't have primary care doctors, or their doctors were busy. So we did a lot of emergency care, but you end up doing a lot of kind of primary care as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that the patients I dealt with were, for the most part, very grateful for the services that we could provide. And it was interesting because I worked in Oakland. I didn't live in Oakland. I lived in San Francisco. But if I was tooling around Oakland, I would see some of my emergency department patients on the regular, just out in the world, especially some of the ones who were less fortunate, mostly undomiciled. I would see them walking down the streets and they'd recognize me and yell my name out, or, yell my name out incorrectly in the middle of a subway. So, that happened. But I loved the work. I did. Yeah. But like anything else, you do that kind of work for a long period of time, almost 20 years, you burn out.
Yeah. I can imagine. And it's an ongoing issue. Like, as you said, you're in the ER seeing people who should be making appointments to see their doctor regularly, but unfortunately they can't due to a variety of financial and home situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there were a lot of reasons. I mean, doctors' offices are busy. Medicine's an interesting world in the U.S., and that's another discussion for a different day. Mm-hmm. So you do the best you can. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I say fortunately for me, I was out of emergency medicine practice when COVID hit. I'd left the ER 2013, I think, and then did like a year and a half working in a public health clinic in San Francisco, and then I did 5 years working workers' comp. We're running a workers' comp clinic, but we did have some urgent care. So we did have some, COVID cases that would come in at the beginning of COVID, and that was interesting because we had no idea what it was. We had no idea how contagious it was. We didn't know how to protect ourselves. Supplies were scarce. So every day you went into work, you were scared for what could happen. But this was your job.
It was a very scary time. And
it was.
we're glad you made it out.
I'm glad we all made it out. Right. God bless those that didn't. It's one of those things, because I'm also a history geek. Our generation has never experienced a pandemic. I knew all about the Spanish flu from like 1918 and how long that lasted. And that lasted, anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And I remember all the conversations about, this will be over in a couple of weeks. And I'm thinking, no, it won't be.
Wasn't that a wild time?
It was.
Like, we're going to be back in about a week or 2
Oh my goodness.
Oh, next month.
Yeah, because I was doing theater then, and we had a show that had opened the week before lockdown, and they were like, "We're shutting everything down," and said, "We'll be back in like 3 weeks," and that didn't happen. And even with my solo show was supposed to premiere April 11th, 2020, at the Marsh, and everything shut down 3 weeks before. Yeah, so it was like, and they're like, "We'll be back in 3 months." No, we won't.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, those early predictions were really just silly.
Oh my goodness. Well, nobody knew. Nobody knew.
Right.
Nobody knew.
They did.
But we're here.
Yeah.
Lessons learned.
With your current role in like clinical work, and what's been one of your more surprising or heartwarming experience, like a positive story that's come out of?
Well, here's what's interesting. When I left clinical practice, which was July of 2020, I stumbled on a job working for a pharmaceutical company, a drug company. I won't name it, but a drug company. And I got in and started doing work on drugs. It's drug safety. So basically, those commercials of, don't take this medication if you have 2 legs, if you have 3 legs, if you're white, if you're black, if you've taken this medication before, if you live in Colorado, that kind of stuff. That's kind of what my job is. You field all those issues that happen with people taking medications and you put them in labels. And I started out working on a lot of HIV drugs. Then I got transferred to the remdesivir or the Veklury team, it's the drug that was used for COVID. So for a year and a half at the height of COVID, that's what I did. drug safety for COVID. So I got to watch around the world a new drug that no one knew about get farmed out to the world and see what it does. And that I found was amazing. I sit back and think, wow, yeah, I was kind of one of the safety doctors looking at information coming in from all over the world about the medication and how it would save lives and shorten the course of disease. So that I thought was amazing, because I was never on that side of medicine before. Beforehand, I was the guy who would prescribe medication.
Right.
But it's interesting being on this side, trying to make sure the medications were safe. So that was an amazing experience.
Survey side.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been an amazing experience. It still is. I no longer work on that drug. I work on some other drugs, but still, I like it. Also because I don't have to take care of patients anymore. I loved it, but I did my duty, and now I'm done.
I love that. So so in that time, when did the acting bug hit you? How did you transition away from medicine a little bit into that?
I didn't transition it away at all. I got on the stage at 5 years old, doing a kindergarten pageant, 1970. Yeah, I'm dating myself. Singing a song called Happy Go Lucky Little Sled with a knit cap on and mittens that my mother made and hot lights, and sweated to death, and my voice cracked. And somewhere out there is the original recording. I think my brother has it. Yeah, but I've been doing theater. If I looked back on my life, I'd probably say I've done some kind of theater something maybe 95% of the years I've been alive.
Oh, wow.
There are very few years in my life I didn't do anything. I think the only years I didn't do anything theatrical was maybe in residency. I mean, I did something all through grade school, all through high school, every year in college. I ran a medical review show in medical school. And then when I came out here, I think I took a year or two out of theater just because I was trying to get my world into emergency medicine. Then I got back into acting. So I've been doing it pretty much nonstop since then.
Wow.
I'm insane. So
I'm trying to imagine that, because going through, residency as a young doctor, and then working in the ER, where I know those hours are
all over the place,
untenable everywhere, all the time. How did you manage to be also in shows? Because those theater rehearsals be 3 or 4 hours and 5 days a week. They want you to.
Yes,
How did you do that?
Here's the answer. When you're an actor, you have no choice. We just do it. Right. So give you an example. So that I can remember one weekend where I had a show on Thursday night. I had a 7 a.m. shift on Friday. I had a show Friday night. I had a show Saturday evening, and then I had a night shift Saturday evening, and then I had a show on Sunday, a matinee at 2, and then I had to be at work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That only happened once or twice, but you learn how to deal with it. You just do.
Lord, goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a lot. Because
I loved it.
I myself have an acting background, and when I was in the throes of it when I was younger, I can't imagine having to be on that same schedule. Can't imagine it. And even though at this point in my life now, I do work a lot of hours, they're very much different from being on my feet, working with patients, working with, blood and things. So,
well, the nice thing about it, it was my acting teacher used to call it free therapy. Because when with the work I did, you had to keep your emotions in check. Because you had to be the stabilizing force no matter who you dealt with. And you dealt with life, you dealt with birth, you dealt with death all the time. And being able to perform was that release. That was that moment where you could be angry, you could be happy, you could be crazy, you could be a murderer, you could be whatever. You could let those emotions out. So acting was and still is, in a way, my release in therapy.
I love that for you.
Thank you. So it worked out.
It absolutely did. With that, we're going to take a short break. To catch up on previous episodes of The Black Landscape, download on Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, and Spotify. Be sure to leave a review, 5 stars. When you come back, we will hear more from Fred Pitts. We are back with frontline worker and actor Fred Pitts. Now, Fred, you have a show that's currently at the Marsh in Berkeley called Aren't You? Tell us about that, because what I read is that you started going on this journey to the missions, and they started thinking you were who?
Well, okay, the backstory. I'm a history geek, and I stumbled upon one of the missions on a weekend away and was like, oh, I should see all the California missions, because I knew about them, because as a history geek since you were 7, you read about this stuff. So I decided to do a self trip, because that's what history geeks do. That's our idea of vacation. So I did this trip all the way down to see the missions, and it started happening once, and then again. Someone was like, you look just like whomever, insert famous black person here. Has anybody ever told you that? And the first or second time I thought, this is not abnormal. It's happened before, but it just kept happening. And at the time, I was kind of posting it on Facebook, because at the time Facebook was kind of new, but I kept posting it every time it happened. And people would tune in every day and go, so who did you look like today? Who did somebody say you look like today? And then finally at the end, a couple of friends said, you should make that into a show. And I thought, I don't do solo performance, but I pulled all the posts down, saved them in a file. A few years later, just after I got married the second time, I said, well, maybe I should just think about this. And so I went to the Marsh and took a course and went with a guy named David Ford, who helped me develop a show. And that's how it came out. Instead of just being a show about
who they thought you looked like. We want to know.
Well, I'm not going to give away everything, because you got to see the show to see all the other things.
What was the one that really caught you off guard? Like,
the one that caught me completely off guard was Billy D. Williams.
Oh.
No. Now, see, here's the funny thing. Because the one I get around here is Barry Bonds. I don't get that, but people say Barry Bonds. And honestly, back in the 80s, 90s, when everybody had the Magnum PI mustache, because that's what we did, it was Richard Roundtree, which if you look at an old headshot of mine, when I had the mustache and put up a picture of Shaft, kind of. So that wasn't too crazy. But Billy D. Williams, handsome man, but I don't look like Billy D. Williams at all.
No.
But it was basically,
right. Handsome man as you are, y'all do not look the same.
That's my point. That's the point. But then the show kind of evolved into this study of history and walking in the shoes of a black man. And I tie in, our own history as black people with the history of Native Americans in this country, and the fact that history gets rewritten, by the victors, and or just, the bad parts they just kind of gloss over for whatever reason. So it really is that journey of looking at, the missions themselves and that history, but I also intersperse my thoughts of being, a black man who's a history geek and saying this is similar to what we went through, and this is what happened here, and why are these people thinking I look like this person, and what's that way of thinking? And so it ends up working out. It's amazing that it does, but it does. It kind of makes sense.
That's so funny. And that, you could even go, I'm sure you do in the show, but it's such an interesting concept in the community where the Palm people really try to act and pretend as if they don't see the differences in all of us. Like, we are not a monolith of people.
Exactly.
And it's we clearly come in different shades. So
yeah, there's something fascinating about, and I use the word bias because we all have them. There was a book I read, I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Biased by Jennifer Eberhardt. She's a professor at Stanford, and she wrote this amazing book about bias. And she talks about the fact that we all have them, no matter what your race. If you're looking at people who are different than you, our mind just tends to kind of blend everybody together, people who don't look like us. You put, black people in the room, and they'll be able to pick out the separate black people, but you put them in a room with a bunch of, white people or Asian people, or the same with any other race, you can identify your own, but you have trouble sometimes differentiating between people of other races. And that was common in her book. And that's what I found fascinating. That whole idea of, just the bias and it's not even, and I don't use the R word, the racist word, because I think I don't view everybody out there as a bigot. There's one woman in the show who really is a bigot, and I call her out. But there's just that baseline bias or prejudice that people have. And I try my best in the show to just say, look, we're not blind to this. We know what's going on. We understand it. We hear it. We think about it. But we'd like you all to be conscious of it as well, as simple or challenging as that is. So, I maybe oversimplifying it, but that's kind of what you have to do in a show that's an hour and 10 minutes. So, theater is very, let me rephrase that. Theater audiences in the Bay Area in general are white. There are a few of us that come, but certainly not as many. And I've loved the audiences, but the reactions are certainly different. When I have a night where I have, a few more of us in the audience, the reactions are totally different because they all get it.
Right.
They all know the laughs are louder. When the audience has got very few minorities in it, they laugh a lot, but there's a discomfort there because hopefully some of what I'm saying and some of the things I've gone through will be familiar and make people think. There's a new tagline I have for the show that says, you'll laugh, you'll cringe, you'll think. And I hope you do one of those three things. And that's kind of it. I'm not there. The show's not to berate people. It's funny. It is a generally funny show. But the idea is I just want people to listen to what I have to say. And then hopefully if they ask a question or if they're uncomfortable, if they think about it a day or two or a week later, I've done my job.
Absolutely. And, I've recently had my own mistaken identity. And it's so funny because I was literally in line at the March in Berkeley this December
okay. What happened?
To see our other friend, Don Reed's show.
Yeah.
And this white woman, this older white woman, she was like, "You were so great last month," and I was like, "Have we met?"
Did she think you were Malia Mills?
I was another actress who I guess had done a show in San Francisco.
Okay.
I forget the name of the company that she mentioned, but
goodness.
Apparently she and I looked like, and she was like, "Weren't you?" And I was like, "What show?" Because I'm a dancer as well, so. But it's been a while, so I didn't know if she was talking about the 5 years ago.
Oh my goodness!
She had seen a video of mine, so I wasn't quite clear. I'm like, "What show, beloved?" And she's like, "Oh, the theater show over at the thing." And she told me, I was like, "That wasn't me."
Oh my goodness!
that wasn't me. She's like, "Oh."
So true Don Reed story.
Oh, great.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
If
so
you
true.
Enjoyed it, great.
Hopefully she did. I'm glad you were great in the show.
Right. No, see, wonderful.
You mentioned Don Reed, mutual friend of ours. So there's a running joke Don and I have about, looking like each other, but it actually came to fruition in front of the Marsh. This is last fall when my show was running still there in San Francisco. And I was standing outside of the Marsh. And if you've been there, they have the posters up on the walls outside. Don's show, the Never Too Late show, was on one side, and in mine, Aren't You, was on the other side of the posters. And I'm standing in front of my poster, kind of doing a street commercial thing so I can get people to come in. This one guy walks up, and I said, "Hey, do you want to see a show here at the Marsh? It's my show's running here." And he looks up. He looks up at Don's poster. And he says, "Oh yeah, I would love to see your show. That sounds really good." I said, "Oh no, actually that's Don Reed. So my poster's right here. That's my show." And he kind of looks at my poster, looks at Don's poster. It's like, "Oh, really? You're not Don?" Like, "No, I'm this guy right here." I said, "Here's a card. Come see my show anyway, because you're the kind of person who needs to see this show."
You need to come to this show now.
I mean, literally, our faces were right there, and he thought I looked more like, he thought I was Don, no matter what. Even though I'm pointing at my poster saying, "This is me."
Child.
Yeah, see?
Well, tell the people where they can find your show, where they can go down to the Marsh and see you.
My show is running at the Marsh in Berkeley. It's 1 block away from the downtown Berkeley BART stop on Alston Way, just up the street between the Target store and the FedEx building, Federal Express building. It's running Saturday nights at 8:30 from February 10th, and then it closes March 2nd. Runtime is about 70 minutes. Come see the show. It's a really funny show. It's a great show for Black History Month because it's like, look, see the show. You'll get some history too.
Yeah, and people can find tickets where?
www.themarsh.org.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you go to the main page, you'll see a bunch of different shows. You'll see my face. Just click on my face and poster, and it'll take you to the link.
Awesome. Well, it's been great having you here, Fred.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed this.
Yay, I'm so glad. Now tell the audience where they can follow you on social media.
Well, I am on Facebook. You just type in Fred Pitts. You can find me. My Instagram presence is Fred Pitts Jr. with no vowels. So it's FRDPTTSJR is my Instagram. Those are the two best ways to find me. And I'm still working on building a website. But, Facebook and Instagram, you type in Fred Pitts, you can find me both those places.
Wonderful. And these links will be in our show notes. Thank you again for being here, Fred.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, you all. Tap in and support Black creativity. Hope to see you at the show. Thank all of you out there for listening and supporting another season. Again, leave a review of the show on Apple Podcasts or in the comments of our social media. This has been another episode of The Black Landscape with Andrea Spearman, where Black excellence is always trending.